And we're live. Hello everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to another episode of Discussions and Dragons, our bi-weekly show about being a
Oh,
game master or a dungeon master and running tabletop role-playing games. I'm Steve and I'm here with my buddy Eric. Hello
hello,
Eric.
everyone. Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I am fantastic.
That's good. We must start our
Mm,
show as we traditionally do. What's the mug situation today, bud?
I might have already done this one. I can't remember, but it's called Party Time,
That's very good.
and it's
That's
got
and
little figures for a
that's
D&D party.
that's good. As in continuing tradition, I think. Yep, we've got snowmen today. In
Yes.
our yeah, I think this is the trend is that you bring like nerdy relevant
Nerdy, like something.
like things, and I just have all the Christmas mugs.
It's perfect.
So, yeah, you can check out at past episodes of us rambling about things, um,
About various mugs.
either on this Twitch channel in the videos section. They should all be saved there, but we all know Twitch video is a meme, so there's a YouTube channel called The Frog is Dead, which is the same as this channel, where all of our VODs live. Not just this, but also all of our acclaimed, award winning, I don't know,
I would say award winning. I would
campaigns.
an award.
I I award you guys experience every time. Does that count? Does that mean that they're
If
award
you've
winning
seen, if
campaigns?
you if you've seen every episode from episode one, by now you should be third level. So
That's right. So, you can check out all of that, including our most recent episode of Discussions and Dragons. Eric, hit me with that title for
oh
Discussions and
yeah,
Dragons,
I already have
episode
today's
three.
title ready too.
Oh, do you?
So yeah. So we had "Do You Lie?" and then "If You Build It, They Will Come."
Mhm.
Last week was "Whose Turn Is It Anyway?"
Very good. And
Thank
that
you.
and that one was about splitting the party and player spotlighting.
And player spotlight. Yep.
Yeah. So we've got that, and today is totally our topic is totally not because we want to talk about Game of Thrones.
No, no, definitely not.
Not at all. I'm gonna move my microphone. It's gonna be might be loud for a second. There we go. All right. I've balanced out the audio levels with a quick positional shift. We're talking about um, something that is very difficult to do and has been a thorn in my side before. I don't know about you, but ending stuff, ending campaigns, and
Conclusions.
concluding campaigns and making ending a campaign feel good.
Right.
Um,
Wrapping up any kind of like plot lines that are still going.
yeah,
And just trying
having
to.
having good writing, not forgetting about Iron Fleets, having reasonable character decisions being made, not throwing away several years of storytelling.
I will say this though.
Yeah,
I will say that the ending that you're alluding to sounds very similar to a lot of D&D parties that I've been in, where you played with somebody for like 6.5 years,
right.
and then the last like game, they're like, "Oh no, my character's been a murder hobo the whole time." And you're like, "No,
That's true. So this one might like our previous show might end up also partially being for players in addition to being for game masters. So
yeah."
so where should we start? What do you think?
Well, we should open with what is a conclusion.
This is an English lesson now, kids. Hold on, I'm gonna get a blackboard overlay so we can. I'll get like that chalk font.
What is a conclusion? The
What?
Webster definition now.
Yeah, right. We Wikipedia now, boys.
The power of
um,
the internet.
yeah. So yeah, so that's a good place to start though. Like, what is a conclusion to you?
So for me, a good conclusion. A conclusion is pretty much just anything. Any way to end a story is the conclusion. Um, Now, there are definitely gradients
Hmm.
of good conclusions to bad
Hmm.
conclusions. I think we can all agree.
Right.
And a good conclusion, in my opinion, would be, the completion of a story arc that makes sense,
Hmm.
uh, is consistent with the story arc thus far, and helps to tie up any plots that are connected with that arc.
Right. Do you so here's a question. I didn't think about this until just this moment. Do we want to talk about all of these through the lens of just Game of Thrones, or do we want to just use other media and examples?
Oh, I'm super down to use other media and examples because I
Okay.
have tons of examples of terrible
Yeah.
like
Well,
like
so
conclusions
well,
to
so I was
various
actually
things.
I have a Game of Thrones example of what I think is a good conclusion,
Okay,
because I think that there
let's do it.
were shockingly good
Yeah.
conclusions to be had in Game of Thrones. I like the conclusion itself a little sketch, but my favorite character arc that ended well, Theon Greyjoy, right?
Yep.
Spoilers for Game of Thrones, by the way, if you're one of the 1% of the internet that doesn't that like both hasn't watched it and doesn't care.
I was gonna say at this point, if you haven't watched it, it's because you don't care, so it
Yeah,
probably doesn't
yeah,
matter.
exactly. We might be doing them a favor. We might be doing
Yeah.
people a
Oh,
favor
yeah.
by telling them how these
Keeping them
character
up.
arcs end.
A lot of
Um,
people just watch Game of Thrones through stuff like this. Like they're just
right.
like, I'll watch it through the memes.
Yeah.
I'll watch it through the memes.
Exactly. But yeah, Theon's character arc from the beginning to the end, I thought was like a really good story, portrayed incredibly well, and for the most part, because most of Theon's arc was like written in the books. Like very
Right.
little work needed to be done by the writers after they ran out of book material. So I feel like Theon's arc is kind of the example of the like most complete of like being like a snooty, cocky kid become like which like then like feeling the sense of duty, becoming more
Yeah.
honorable, becoming much less honorable, becoming Reek and like becoming like horribly tortured and like just getting his character broken down to its like
Right.
essential bits, no pun intended, and then like redeeming the redemption arc, which culminates in him sacrificing himself
Right.
for weird tree wizards. You know, like
Weird wizards.
like
I think you mean King Weird Dream Wizard.
you know what? Sure. Sure.
I
Whatever,
think
man.
I think
Um
that's what you mean.
that's exactly what I mean. So, um
Um, I agree. Theon Greyjoy's story arc throughout the entire series has been really good. They gave you the buildup of him coming into power way too fast and for
mhm,
all the wrong reasons. And then they showed him, collapsing
mhm,
down, as you said, and just like being reduced down to just like his basic foundation
yeah,
of a person, and then building himself back up from there.
right.
It
Yeah.
was a very well done part of the story.
Yeah. One of the few. One of the few. Portrayed by the way, like I hold that Alfie Allen is like low key one of the best actors on that
Alfie
show.
Allen is amazing, and his sister can sing me to sleep any day.
Oh really? Is his sister?
Oh my God, his sister's Lily Allen. You didn't know that?
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That
yeah. Alfie Allen. There's a song.
that makes
Lily
sense.
Allen. Lily Allen sings a song called Alfie, and it's about how all he does is sit in his room and smoke pot all day.
That tracks.
It's so good. You should listen to it. It's a funny song.
I will. If we ever get to the point where I'm editing the audio of these podcasts and inserting things, I'll insert it.
Insert that song.
Yeah. Um,
When you hear the song, you're gonna understand why that is so funny because it's like a weirdly upbeat song. It's like, like it's so
yeah.
good.
Totally.
Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of my idea of like a good conclusion
right.
and like reasonable storytelling that comes to a like good like climax, which leads to you know ultimately a good character.
Right. I don't want to say like satisfying, but like
Mm.
a redeemable
Yeah.
conclusion because by the end he was very much redeemed,
Oh yeah, very much so.
which I think. And so I'll take that and I'll go off of like Jaime Lannister, where a lot of people disagree with me, but I will say this: not every not every person is redeemable.
Yes.
Not every person is going to. You can show them the correct way to go, but not every person's going to follow that road. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very realistic that Jamie's conclusion is that he, spoiler
Uh,
alert, flees
yeah.
and goes home.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that that I think is like a reasonable arc, and I don't think that that's like necessarily a bad thing. There are other things about that arc
There
that
were a couple odd ones,
yeah.
couple odd
Um,
things.
I mean, like we could talk about letting moments like giving enough time to things, right? Like the thing about Jamie, and again, spoilers for season 8, if anyone cares. The thing about it is like it's not that we got to see him be in a relationship with Brienne. It's that we only got to see it for like 10 minutes of screen time,
Right.
and like we just didn't get enough of that, so that like him leaving at the end of the episode and Brienne being like super torn up about it like doesn't feel earned to us.
Yeah. The thing is, they tried to slam a lot of tie-ups
Yeah.
into the final season. I think season 8 would have been. I think the conclusion would have been perfect, had they have spread it out over 2 seasons, maybe. Like they should have started some of this last season and then wrapped it up this season if they knew this was going to be the last season.
Right.
But
Well,
they
like
just
I feel like if
didn't give it
they
enough time.
I feel like if we had
10 years is enough time, but
I feel like if we had like somewhere between like 7 and 10 more episodes, hell,
yeah,
like even like 5 to 7 more episodes, I think a lot of this would have been a lot better.
right.
Cuz like
Yeah, had they one like another season, one more
yeah.
season just to spread out all of the plot
Yeah.
so that they could tie everything up nicely.
Right.
Right.
All this is to say there was a
And
point
that was the preamble into.
there was a point to this rambling, and there will
Oh my god,
probably
I have today's episode title. Do you want me to hit it?
yeah, absolutely hit me
To
with
do, the point of all of this preamble is to get us into today's episode, which is so much for my happy ending.
it. That's at that point, if I were a good editor and was making the audio version of this podcast,
Just
we'd be rocking to some Avril right now. So ending campaigns. We'll probably talk more about Game of Thrones interspersed or like through the
yeah,
episode.
yeah.
If I were a better producer, I would have put up like I would have made a little spoiler warning thing for the video feed, but I'm not, so that's fine.
So hopefully nobody.
Yeah,
Again, if you're part of the 1% of people who didn't watch it up to this
yeah,
point, it's because you didn't
we'll
want to.
we'll be sure, and like we'll both try to make a conscious effort to say like we're gonna spoil a thing, and if you're like listening and you don't want to get spoiled, then like skip ahead like 30 seconds or something.
Like earmuffs.
Yeah, yeah. I could make like a spoiler sticky note. That's what I'll do.
Perfect. Spoiler sticky notes.
Yeah. So
I don't know why I'm writing that down. Anyway.
That's another episode.
Spoiler sticky notes. This is
Yeah,
another
right.
episode. But yes. So
yeah.
conclusions, happy endings, and
Yeah. So
completions of campaigns.
yeah, so you've been a part of a few campaign conclusions and or facilitated them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you, while I make this spoiler sticky note, give us a brief overview of like your experiences ending a campaign, and then I'll make this, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah, perfect. So I've been in 3 or 4 campaigns that actually started at first level and like built all the way through and completed. I've been in a slew of games that started at like fifth level and went to like eighth, and then everybody was like, "Ugh." But but that's going to be the more common campaign style that you see.
Yeah.
But finishing campaigns for me, from the GM perspective, is a very daunting task because you're trying to take this culmination of a campaign that can run anywhere from, you know, 5 to longer years, especially if you're running a campaign from first to 18th or 20th level or what have you. It's going to take a while, even if you're playing. Yes, even if you're playing regularly. Um, so it's a very, yeah. I think daunting is the perfect word for it. It's not like
Yeah.
scary because I'm not like afraid to do it, but it's like it's
It
a lot. There's a lot that you have to put together.
yeah, no, it's like it's really stressful. So I've ended exactly one campaign ever, and it was the very
Mm,
first Blades in the Dark campaign that I did, and it ran for like about 2 years, and we decided that we wanted to end it and move on. It involved a lot of people that are like I'm still playing with. We're just playing other stuff, but
right.
like we weren't even streaming at the time, or we streamed like very sporadically. It was before I had really started doing the channel stuff, so it was like I wasn't ending it like for the purposes of it being on Twitch or YouTube or anything, which is a whole
Right.
other can of worms. But like I was just ending it for like me and my four friends, and I like lost sleep thinking about the best ways to end it, and like
Oh yeah.
writing like good, or trying to like write and come up with like good stuff.
It's it, yeah.
it's rough. Yeah.
It is. It's very, very daunting. Fun anecdote on that.
Yeah.
One of the campaigns that I completed, one of the first ones I ever ran with the group that I now run regularly Wednesday nights with. I prepped up this huge boss fight for them, and it was the idea was that they had just gotten past the boss, and they're like at the this antechamber before this final room or whatever. And the door starts to open to the antechamber, and then it freezes because the boss is there and he's like telekinesis holding the door. And then he splits into three, so you have to fight three of him.
Hmm.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that they needed was beyond the door, but he's like holding the door. So while he's fighting everyone, the cleric of the group was like, I'm just gonna like gaseous form under the door. Can I just gaseous form under the door? And I'm like, so I'm sitting here like, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you can.
Yeah.
So like immediately and like basically beyond the door, and this is not a mistake, but it is a trope that I will guide you away from, because basically beyond the door was like the button or whatever they needed to just like win.
The
Like it was like
MacGuffin. Yeah.
yeah, the push the button you win thing. So I was like, okay, well, they literally can just get beyond the door and just finish the game, and this boss will have like no time at all. So like instantly I'm like, oh well, the button is now guarded by traps and monsters, and it's 30 feet in the air. Like, so it was like half of the party was fighting the boss, and
Yeah.
then the cleric had to like figure out how to do all these little, because I was like, there's no way I'm gonna let them finish this in like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
But that was it still ended up not being as good of an ending as it could have been, and that's, I would say, 100% on me, because don't make your conclusions just like a button push. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't do it.
Or like or there's always like there's the pump fake. There's like here's this
Mm.
button, and then they press it, but like nothing happens, and like
But then like nothing happens, you're like, surprise, it was the other button.
well, like it's like nothing happens because you have to like kill the guy and get his life essence and put it in the button.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Like the button has like a little like dot in it, and that dot is specifically for a key that can only be found inside the dude's left lung. Like, I'm with you. I'm here. I got you.
We've all played a Final Fantasy game in our time.
We've all we all know how this works.
Yeah, totally. I've never gotten to run like an end boss, like an epic level D&D monster, because I've never ended a D&D campaign before. And
It's fun.
yeah, I think
It's
all
fun
of
business.
the like even so like the one D&D campaign I have going right now is Waterdeep, and like it's very possible to finish that campaign without fighting the big bad.
Yeah, without fighting the big guy
because it's
at
all
all.
social challenges and stuff. So
Yep.
I don't know if it's in the future for me to run a big epic level bad guy anytime soon.
Um, fifth edition versus like 3.5 or Pathfinder really, really changed how, in general, boss fights are. But let's not go into that because that would be a really good topic for another episode, like boss fights.
Yeah, this is Distractions and Dragons, our semi-annual segment where we come up with good ideas and I talk while Eric writes them down.
But yeah, we can talk on running boss fights because I have a lot to say on running boss fights, or just like in general using a character to their full potential.
I bet you do, because
I have so
and I could talk a lot about maximizing like player characters because I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Mm.
So,
But specifically talking about conclusions,
yeah,
this is more for myself than anything else.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, but using that boss or using that final monster or using whatever because again in Dragon Heist it's very possible you don't even end up fighting them.
Yeah.
It's using them in the correct way to help pull everything together and
Yeah.
not and then also not making that fight disappointing.
Oh
Like
man.
if you gaseous form under a door and push the button, the boss fight's over, and it's like
Oh,
that
man.
was a disappointment.
Hold on. I've got a Game of Thrones analog. I've got my spoiler tag. Here it is. Oh, it's backwards on the camera. That's fine.
That's okay.
I'll hold this up when I have it down and I'm done spoiling. So the example that you gave about the like ending with the button push is totally Arya and the Night King.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
like the culmination of like this like epic thing, and like the Night King's like coming in and Arya just like that's the rogue like running in. It's like an assassination subclassed rogue, and just like being like level 18 or whatever, and just like jumping in and getting the assassinate the crit like on the sneak attack.
That's exactly what it is. Like,
Yeah.
while everything's being invaded, she was like, and let me just make sure I've got everything I need to have advantage on the attack roll. She waited until he was like right next to Bran so that she knew she had an ally within 5 feet.
Exactly.
She automatically critical.
Yeah. Yeah. So
she was like, and now.
So if anyone wants examples and wants a tutorial on high level rogue play, go watch that battle. Cause she crits some fucking epic stealth rolls in that library.
Oh, yeah,
and stuff
she does.
Too, so. All right.
She does. She does a good job.
Yeah. All right. Spoiler tag down.
Spoiler tag down. But yes.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Like that's kind of the thing that I worry about, is like having your entire campaign come into like a giant epic like climactic battle, like has a lot of potential to like to kind of just end very quickly. You know, we talked about it in the dice rolling episode a bit.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, here's my like cool epic ending of my campaign, like be it a big bad guy or like even just a challenge, like a skill challenge or something, and like the players just like roll like 4 crits in a row, and then that's it.
That just kind of is what it is. Sometimes you're just kind of like, guess this wasn't meant to be a good ending,
right?
Because it's not just. I mean, and this kind of goes against a lot of what I say about the game, gaming, which is in general you're writing a story for the players, but coming up with a good conclusion is also for you as the GM or the DM, because while the players are all involved in the characters that they've built, you're involved in the story that you've created. So you don't want the ending to disappoint you either. You want it to be entertaining for yourself.
Yeah.
So
it's like stuff like it's important for your campaign to like make you feel good and satisfied.
Right, like you produced a good event.
Yeah. We've talked all the time on this podcast about all the cool shit that has always been in our worlds that we've built that the players will probably never know about.
Never.
You know? But
definitely not.
Yeah. So ending Blades, when I ended Blades, like that was the closest that we had ever come to like a big climactic boss fight. It's really hard to do that in Blades though, because the system just isn't really geared towards like having a lot of like combat just in general.
Right, not combat in the sense of other tabletop games
Yeah.
where you're just
Um,
standing there hacking at each other.
right, exactly. Like you can, but the whole thing is just like, all right, I roll a skirmish. All right, we deal a harm to each other. All right, I roll another skirmish. All right, I do that. All right, I tick off this item box or I tick off this armor box so I don't take harm, but they take harm. All right, I roll
Oh
another.
wait,
All right,
I was wearing plate mail.
yeah, I roll another skirmish. All right,
Right.
I'm gonna take some stress to resist that. All right, I roll another skirmish. Like there's just like not a lot to do there.
Right.
And so our like big climactic thing in that game was like a score essentially, where the players faced off against I had kind of set up and established this like rival game that hilariously enough was led by their universe's version of Costa. um and like the whole like conclusion was um it was all like they were like going through this building and they had to like find the person, and there were three kind of people in the other gang, and like one of them was like a high level whisper, one of them was a high level cutter, one of them was like a was the hound that was Costa. And like so it became a bit more interesting. It still wasn't necessarily like I wasn't playing tactically against them, because in Blades you still just all like you don't roll as a GM, you just react to
Right, you
dice
react to
rolls
what
and
the
stuff.
players are doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we ran through that score, and like the outcome of it became the ending. And then like from there I like came up with some like narration on the spot, and that was like kind of that. And like that was stressful because I couldn't exactly write the conclusion. Like I feel like in like D&D or in other games, you can sort of like write a conclusion in preparation for
Oh
the
yeah.
thing.
Oh,
Like
100%. Oh,
kind of like
absolutely.
and
Do I have it right here? I do. Go on.
and
Go on.
I yeah, no, it's fine. And I didn't for that Blade session. That's probably why it was so stressful, because I wanted it to feel like organic and natural.
Right.
Um, and I have another point that I'll get to in a second. What do you got?
Oh, I was going to say for D&D, I don't know if I've shown this before. This is the campaign I'm currently running,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the entirety of it. Like
Yeah.
this is from start to finish. This is the outline. So I've already got the conclusion generally designed. I won't
Mm-hmm.
put detail into it until we actually start getting to that part, because points in this could change based on what's going on in the campaign itself.
Right.
But because Blades in the Dark is based on, not based on, but Blades in the Dark involves um, I wouldn't say like a significant amount of more improv from the GM's perspective, because it is all, not all, but mostly player driven.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in D&D, typically the plot is DM driven and the players are just riding along. So I was
Right.
going to ask, is is there a specific way that you know that Blades in the Dark is usually finished, or is it usually like as the campaign's coming to an end, the DM or the GM improvs a big score or a heist or what have you?
Um. So I've never really seen a Blades campaign end other than mine. I got into Blades by watching two different like shows on YouTube. Well, like YouTube and Twitch, between the two of them. One of them was like roleplay, which is like Immy JP's channel. Had a Blades in the Dark game that was like run by John Harper. It was like right before the the book actually came out. And
And John Harper's the one who wrote it, right?
yeah,
Okay.
so it was like it was like a campaign that John Harper was GMing, and there were a bunch of cool players, and that was kind of the thing that like really got me into it, because I was already watching that channel for their D&D stuff, and then
Right.
I saw the Blade stuff, and I was just like, this is like the fucking jam right here. And then I watched an old playtest campaign that John ran like a while ago, called the Bloodletters, and that was a really interesting one to watch because not only was it really good with a lot of like really cool, like some really good players and really good, like they made cool characters and stuff, but it was also like still the like alpha and beta tests of Blades, so it was fun to see how the
Oh
rules
yeah.
changed. And like especially because they would play like once a month, and so you would see like the rules change from like just session to session, like
From session to session, they're like, also these skills no longer exist.
yeah, or like it's changed now, like and that sort of
Right.
stuff. But like both of those campaigns, like so the Bloodletters one never really ended. It just like everyone got busy, and
Mm,
since it was just a playtest campaign anyways, they didn't really
right, right.
finish it. And then the roleplay one, same thing, like ended up not being able to be finished because of like players getting busy and stuff. So like I've never seen how other people end Blades, but like
Right.
the thing that I was gonna say I want to talk about in, and I'm curious to hear your kind of like input because you've talked about how like you think of it as like the GM writing a story for the players, and I haven't finished a D&D campaign yet, but I feel like even when I do, I would put a lot more of an emphasis on like the collaborative nature of the ending. Like
Oh yeah, absolutely.
like I would like because I let the ending of Blades of our Blades game be like for the most part player driven, right? Like I put a score in front of them and I had a vague idea of like here are the obstacles that they're going to face in the score, but like how it ends is up to them.
Right.
Not just how they roll the dice, but like the decisions that they make along the way. Like
Right.
if I put innocent bystanders between them and their rivals, are they going to kill those bystanders to get to their rival? Like like because that will change how they are perceived in like the ending
By the
narration
end
kind of
by
thing.
right. By the
Um,
end of
yeah,
the series, yeah.
yeah. And so like
Do
what
they take a dragon and no, never mind.
yeah
What's
yeah
that
right
spoiler now?
yeah um or like like that sort of stuff. So like what's your take on like player collaboration in the endings and like
um I think it's almost I don't want to say like required, but I would like to put a lot of emphasis on that. Conclusions are for the players, for the most part. Um, it's fun to hear about like after the full series, the entire campaign finishes. It's fun to hear like the what is it the epilogue, the
yeah
epilogue of what the characters go on and do.
right
Um,
yeah
and a
and
lot of that conclusion, a lot of that epilogue comes from how you finish out the campaign and what the ending goals of each of the players was.
yeah and like so when we were doing Blades when we had decided that like let's like kind of wind it down, and again we weren't streaming, this was like just for our benefit, like about a month out I was like, hey guys, I think we've got like between 3 and 4 sessions left.
Right.
Start thinking about like based on like where we're at, like think about like what will your character do next, and then from there alter that based on like the stuff that's going on. And then I gave every player like a couple of minutes, like at the end I was like, tell us about what Alexis does, tell us what Gideon does, tell us what Harold does. These were like the different characters, and
Right.
like take as long as you need. And if you want to like if you want like an epilogue where you like interact with an NPC, then like I'll jump in as that NPC. Or if you want to interact with another character, then that person would that player would jump in and they would like do
Right.
an epilogue scene or something like that. Like just letting that space breathe, I think is like super important.
It is in that last session. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's like pacing and stuff like that. All of that comes into play, especially if you, or if you're even doing an epilogue session.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in one game that did an epilogue session. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And this is an idea that I will push to anybody on Earth. The idea that was we finished the campaign, we did like the final session, and then we came back,
Mm-hmm.
the next week or whenever the schedule would have had us normally come back. And what we did was it was like a year later. So it was
That's cool.
a
Yeah.
year, yeah, it was a year after the events of the campaign concluded,
Yeah.
And it's like based on how it finished, does the world know who you are now, or did the entire thing happen in secret? Like, does everybody know that you saved the world? And like various ways that the different players move on or pick up their
Yeah,
lives and start over, stuff like that.
I
It
love
was
I
very
love
good.
that stuff. Something that was done very poorly in our old friend Game of Thrones. Like so we talk about, I have to like,
It's
my
it's
arm's getting tired. I didn't think this through.
oh,
Um
I'll make keep going.
no,
I'll make a spoilers one for you, James.
we're fine. This is fine. I'm resting my hand on my arm on my keyboard. We're good.
Oh, there you go.
Um
Perfect.
yeah, figured it out. So like people, like one of the things George R. R. Martin talks about all the time is like, Lord of the Rings ends and Aragorn becomes king, and he, is king for however long, and he's a good king, but like being a
Like
good
200 or
king
something.
like doesn't fucking matter. Like what was Aragorn's tax policy, like that sort of stuff. And I that was like the like small council scene in the epilogue was like a nod to that, but like fuck did they do it in a stupid way.
Yeah.
um like that kind of that's like kind of the example, right, of like the
And that
some amount of
right.
time later.
And then exactly. So like you can do it well and then you can do it not well. We had a good discussion about the king being rolled into the room and going, "Do we know where the dragon is?" No? All right, bye.
Yeah. Do I know where the dragon is? No. All right, I'll find him. Like, oh
Oh,
yeah, because you can see everything all the time forever. Like,
so like why didn't you just come in the door already finding him, I guess is the question. Like if you can already have found it, why didn't you just do it yourself? Like
because we needed to see that Podrick was a knight now, Eric.
it's
Pod
true.
the true. All right, one more thing, and then we'll put the spoiler tag down. The true tragedy of Game of Thrones is that Pod the Rod, the legend, is a Kingsguard now and can take no wife and
And
father
can
no
take no
children.
wife and father no children.
That's the real tragedy is for the women of Westeros that, that won't get
uh,
to.
so this is a completely
It,
side note. This is a
yeah.
tangent in dragons right here.
Are we
Um,
still spoiler tagging or no?
no, this
All
isn't a
right.
spoiler.
All right.
So Game of Thrones is based on the War of the Roses, about like the wars in England and Europe and all that.
Yeah.
We were my fiance and I were talking about Brienne of Tarth specifically, and like the timeline of the War of the Roses versus her timeline stuff. And do you know that she's based on Joan of Arc? That's who
Really?
she's based on. Yeah, her character, or at least from what I was reading, a lot of like her character story arc and stuff is based on the idea of like Joan of Arc at the time, who was a woman who had like a holy mission or
Yeah.
and defended the king of anyway, like
That's
a lot
awesome.
of her story arc. Yeah, it was very interesting. Anyway,
I Brienne was such a good character.
Brienne might have been my favorite character.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we do a postscript to this podcast? So like we'll finish the podcast and then can we do like a postscript where we just chat more about Game of Thrones for a little bit?
We just Game of Thrones talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Cool. All right. I didn't know if you had like an extra like 10 or 20 minutes or whatever to.
I have a good 10, 15.
Cool. So yeah, so let's jump into this episode. So yeah, epilogue session. I like that idea a lot. I also we just did a post-mortem session for Blades where like we did the ending and then we did it immediately after, but in hindsight I think I would like to do it like a couple of days after so people have had time to like process it. Of
Right.
just like we got together and we sat down and we talked not in character or anything. We just talked about the campaign as a whole, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we thought we could improve on both as players, and like I got a lot of like really good feedback for myself,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff, and like that's an important part of ending a campaign, at least for me. So like I don't know about you and I don't know about I'm pretty sure I have an idea of like how where you land on this, but like I don't know about most people, but like I'm constantly trying to improve as a GM and as a storyteller and as like a as a person. But like
As a human, as a human being.
as a human being, but like just being able to sit down with the players and just candidly, you know, say like, you know, what were things that were good, what were things that were not, and being able to like take that criticism and kind of like roll with it and work to improve on it without being like offended, but like also taking it with like the good stuff, you know, and like kind of
Right.
like making your peace with that. Um,
No, none of us are perfect DMs
yeah,
or GMs. Like Gary Gygax was probably definitely an amazing GM, but I'm sure his players even were like, not a fan of this.
yeah,
Uh, it's important to hear that from the player side because then you, as the DM or GM, you don't get the same view as them. And that took me a while to realize.
yeah,
So I litter my games with details about like the final boss or like information that you need to carry on.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it doesn't occur to me that players didn't occur to me that players don't see the same information that I see
Yeah,
because like I'm aware of all of it and like I might tell them some of it, but they're they pick up a sentence out of a paragraph and I've got a
right,
page. So
yeah.
like I try to tell people who are DMing or GMing for like the first time, I always or running a campaign for the first time, I tell them give them as much information as you possibly can because if you have a page, you're going to give them probably a paragraph and they're going to hear a word. So they're going to
well
have nothing.
well like so my kind of way of doing that is like, because I'm kind of like in the opposite boat. We're gonna have arguments in Dragons for a second. No, I'm kidding. It's
Fighting
the
for dragons.
yeah, flagpole fighting in Dragons. Um, where
Discussions
like
of Dragons Black Flag Edition.
exactly, Fight Club. um, I'm a so like when people are running games for the first time, I usually tell them like, you know, like give them as like prepare as much or as little as you feel comfortable with, but like I wouldn't write. So like if it's like you out of a paragraph they get a sentence, like my take on that is like, well, I'm just not gonna write the paragraph, I'm just gonna write a really good sentence.
Right,
and like
right,
and like or like make it like make it put it somewhere, have it be like a prophecy or have it be, you know,
right. Oh,
whatever.
absolutely. And
um
what I meant was like while you have a page of details, you might
mhm,
give them like a paragraph of those details because that's what they found. But even
sure,
from that paragraph, they're getting maybe a sentence. Because if you
right.
ask them later, they're like, "Did you remember that writing that you found at that like ancient temple?" And they're like, "Yeah, it said something about water." You're like,
Yeah.
"Okay."
How much, so we're getting off, we're a bit tangent and dragony right now, like you
Tangent
said.
and Dragons right
how
now.
much how much do you as a GM help your players remember stuff?
Uh, um, that's changed over the years as well, specifically for the intention of making the game flow a little more smoothly.
Yeah.
Um, it's based on players. I've had games where the players write down every other word I say, so
Hmm.
it's like if they need information, somebody has a notebook of information that they can peruse
You
through.
press O and bring up the chat log.
Exactly, exactly. Um, for groups that don't have that, I tend to do it for them.
Yeah,
Any information I give them, I would assume is logged into like their journal, and
yeah,
like anytime
right,
that they need it, they can say, I know we found that thing about this. Where was that? And
yeah.
as long as they can give me an inkling of like where they found the
Ex-
data or like what was in it,
yeah,
I'll give them the rest of it. As long as they can prove that they do remember getting it and that they
yeah,
remember a piece of it.
yeah.
But if they're like completely blank, I'm like, no, you must have missed
Yeah,
it.
so like so the reason I think of this is like we just played, on Thursday we played our Dragon Heist game,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and we hadn't, so we got back to it a couple of weeks ago, but before that there were like 4 weeks where we couldn't play because someone was out and then another person was busy, and we weren't in a spot where like just we could just play down a player. They were like in the
Right.
middle of like a climactic like set piece of a chapter, and so we got back in and we finished that set piece. And so on Thursday they were like, I was like, okay, like what do you guys want to do now? like they talked to like the City Watch, and like the City Watch gave them a lead. And so I was like, what do you want to do now? And so they were like, can we just sit down like at the start of this day, the next day, and just kind of like suss out all of the information that we have, and figure all that out. And I was like, yeah, totally. And so like they did that for a good like 5 or 6 minutes. I said nothing, and they were just discussing in character, but there were certain aspects of the details that they weren't 100% clear about. And so I told them, I was like, if you want clarification about any of the details of the timelines or something, like just ask me and I'll jump in, because like we the players haven't played this game in like 4 or 5 weeks or whatever,
Right.
but like your characters experienced it yesterday. So
Right.
like,
You just experienced this like an hour ago, if
yeah.
that even.
If it's not like plot important, like plot centric stuff, like timelines, if it's like, I want to remember like this thing about this like side thing that you mentioned or whatever, I usually make them make a wisdom save.
Yeah, some
Like,
kind of a save just to see if they
remember
remember it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Did you? Because I've also had an experience where the players were like, "Hold on, let's acclimate, let's sit down and get all of our details straight."
yeah.
And while they're discussing it, I hear them saying things that, and I'm, but I just sit there like, if you guys need any, like, I can clarify any details if you need it. And they're like, no, I think we got it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if I were running like my own campaign, then I would totally just like let that happen and roll with it, and let them be wrong.
I offered to clarify any details that they might have been foggy on, but they were like, no, we're good. And
yeah, like, playing Waterdeep specifically is a bit weird, and this is a Tangent and Dragon off of Tangent and Dragons. We're tangentceptioning right now. We're going so deep.
This is a double aside.
Yeah.
It's an aside from the aside.
Yeah, we're 180 degrees away right now. The like Waterdeep is structured in this weird way. This is like a thought about. So I've never run a pre-made adventure before. Waterdeep's the first one. And I don't know if they're all like this, but Waterdeep is definitely like this, where it's like, right now my players are in chapter 3. And they finished this like climactic set piece of chapter 3, this like noble house that they go to that's being invaded by these bad people, and they like go and they try to help, but the nobles are like in with the Zentarum and like all this stuff. And then like this character needs to escape with the MacGuffin, because the character escaping with the MacGuffin is what sets up chapter 4. And so like that happens, but the players are supposed to have more information about this character who ran away with the MacGuffin, so that at the start, because chapter 4 starts, so the end of chapter 3 is them going after this character to go get the MacGuffin, and like kind of like a city-wide search / chase for the thing. And but like the players hadn't done the thing to get more information about the guy, so they didn't even know how to like track it, didn't even know or anything.
Who to look for.
Yeah. And so I had to have like, I had the City Watch play person be like, because the character is a construct, and so it's like the City Watch guy is like, oh, did you know about this construct that they had gotten? You should go to the House of Inspired Hands, the Temple of God, and find out more about it, And it's like that after they sat down and they sussed out everything that had happened was like the only lead that they had. And so it's really, but like, that was obviously like me kind of like maneuvering the narrative into such a way that was the only way that they had to go. But like, it's really hard for me to not feel super railroady when I do that kind of stuff. Like, like this example, yes, but then like there's definitely some stuff in like chapter 4 where it's like part of chapter 4 is like the characters are supposed to get arrested, and it's like, I know my players, and I know they're going to try to resist arrest, and I know they're going to try to do everything they can to get out of it. And I like, even if they try and they like make some checks and they like crit like 3 of them, like they have to get arrested because the story goes there.
Yep.
And it's just like,
it's Yeah, there's yeah, we could do an entire episode on the uses of railroading.
Yeah.
I'm actually I'm actually a big proponent of railroading in the proper places. There are definitely points in a story where it won't make sense if it doesn't go a certain way
Yeah.
for everybody involved. They're not often, and it's not everywhere, and I specifically don't
Right.
like railroading as a general idea for a campaign.
Yeah.
But to get from plot point 3 to plot point 4, if you have to have something happen,
Yeah.
um, oh, railroad,
Can
ooh,
we
railroad, I'm throwing down.
can we do an episode about railroading sometime?
Oh
Because
my god,
I bet we
I
both
would
have a
do.
lot of thoughts about that.
I do. I will do an entire episode on
And
railroading and
I
like
bet
unpopular DM tips. Like,
I
here's a couple
I
things I recommend doing that you shouldn't tell your players that you're doing.
well, like the thing about doing like an unpopular DM tips episode is that like all of the tips that we give could probably be entire episodes.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So like, but like I bet you when we do our episode about railroading, it'll be very similar to our dice episode.
Probably. It'll
Yeah.
probably be very, very similar. Very, very similar. Arguments and dragons.
Yeah, exactly. Debates and dragons.
Debates
Gotta-
and dragons.
Got to
I
keep
love
the
it.
alliteration going.
Yeah. Very on brand.
Do we have any final thoughts about ending campaigns before we go into Game of Thrones spoiler talk?
Before we go into full on GOT tangents.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, ultimately, ending a campaign is very difficult. Like
It
that's
is.
not, and I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that to make it more daunting than it already is. I'm saying that as a way to, if you're gearing up to end a campaign, start thinking of the conclusion now. Start jotting down your ideas of like how you would want the
Yeah.
ending to be.
Yeah. If you're watching right now and you are running a campaign, if you've been running a campaign for years, or if you literally started your campaign yesterday, just like take a moment like right now and think like
How would I want
what
this
is
to end?
what does the end game like look like, and maybe jot that down. And if you started your campaign yesterday and you jot down like right now how you think it's going to end in like a couple years or a couple months or however long your campaign's going to last, like go back and look at that, because it could be
Most likely not going to be the same.
yeah, it could be a really fun little exercise.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know?
Or it can give you a lot of inspiration as to how you want it to end now. That's why I do, as you saw, that's why I do the notebook, because
Yeah.
I've got my outlines of how I want everything to finish out. And I know who the big bad guy is and all that,
Mhm.
but like the details of how they get there, like how the fight goes, all of that can alter
Yeah.
drastically
Right.
based on the campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's that. The other thing, my kind of like closing thoughts about it is like sometimes you start to gear up to end a campaign and it's like really really stressful, and you are having trouble doing that, and like there's nothing wrong with like not necessarily ending but like suspending a campaign. like don't be afraid to like leave some of it open, because that can become, either you can pick back up that campaign with those players, you can like if you start a new campaign it can kind of like piggyback off that idea. I mean, like that's what Blades is right now. Like the Blades game that you guys are playing is like very much in the same universe as the first Blades was, where like all the stuff that happened in that campaign, it is either has or will happen. And that's going to be a thing that I think is going to be fun, when like stuff from the first campaign happens and seeing how y'all react to that.
But yeah, that'll be really good.
So, you know, don't be afraid to have like I have like the Blade cinematic universe like in my head. Like don't be afraid to have like the equivalent of like that kind of like long form world in your gaming spheres.
We can talk, and that would be just Distractions and Dragons.
Yeah.
Doing same universe
Yeah.
games, because that's what I do.
Right.
Listen, I enjoy world building, but I'm only doing it once, kids.
Yeah.
I've built an entire world. All of my games pretty much that one world.
Yeah. And we're gonna, like, when we were talking about, like, when we do the Titan Shore stuff in July.
Yeah,
So
where we'd have two games running through the same world
yeah, and that's gonna
at the
be,
same time.
yeah, all here. I guess we haven't talked about that yet, but that's the thing that we're gonna do at
That
some
is a
point.
thing.
Yeah,
That is a thing we intend to start.
that'll be
And
that'll
that's
be
gonna be the West Marches, right? Yeah.
yeah, that'll be fun to do, and that'll be very fun to run, and then I think it's gonna be really fun to talk about. Like
Yeah.
we can do, like, we'll do, like, campaign diaries together about it and stuff.
It'll be good stuff, especially with the style that is West Marches. We could just throw up on the Discord like, hey, we're gonna game, this whatever.
Yeah.
And
We can,
if we have,
we borrow each other's players and stuff.
well, I was gonna say if we have like a group of 10 people who
Yeah.
want to play the games, we could say, hey, we're gonna be doing this game Friday night or whatever.
Yeah.
The first, whatever 4 of you can make it, we'll run it with you for, because right? Because like with a West Marches game, you do everything all in one session where you go out from town, explore, do whatever you need to, and then try to get back to town as before the end of the session.
Yeah, exactly. And I usually, like, if, like, depending on, like, session length and stuff, like, we could also do a whole episode about running a West Marches game.
Oh yeah.
Like, and like about abbreviating and abridging adventures and stuff like that, because, like, holy shit, do I do that. Like, I play Waterdeep is a 2-hour D&D game every week, you know. Like people play D&D for like 8 hours at a time, and, like, being able to, like, focus down and play, just like get quality amounts of play out of just a couple hours. Like, yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about that.
Well, and to that, I will say that my regular sessions run either 3 or 4 hours long at the most, because usually after that I see people starting to not burn out, but like the distraction levels get bigger. No matter how good you're doing as a DM, after X amount of time, people start using their phone, So I usually say for me and for my groups, I think like 3 to 4 hours is the perfect cutoff.
Yeah, I think when we do the Titan Shore stuff, I think those will be 3-hour casts.
Yeah,
I think that's, like, the perfect amount. I feel like because we're gonna try to do it in the West Marches style, the 2 hours is a little short, and I've done 2-hour West Marches games. A little short. I feel like 4 hours is just a little much.
Right.
Just in general. And so
3 hours is the perfect amount of time, because it gives you that first like 15 minutes that everybody's like getting acclimated and like saying hi and whatever and getting into the game. Yeah. Another 15 minutes to discuss what happened last time or to get us caught up to where we are, and then you have 2.5 hours to do everything else.
Exactly. Cool. So
that was our mini session. That was our mini episode on timing your game.
Tangents and Dragons. It was more like a post-epilogue, an epilogue to episode 3.
The epilogue to episode 3.
Yeah. So I think that's about been Discussions and Dragons.
And now our theme play is and a little dragon flies by, and it ironically might be the same dragon used to burn town keys.
It's just Drogon's face.
But it's me on the back of it like this.
Yeah, totally. Man, we need to get a graphics guy.
Oh my god, we do.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take the stream down for 2 seconds so that we can cut the VOD, and then we'll come back up and we'll talk about Game of Thrones for a little bit.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. So we'll do our Discussions and Dragons sign off now. We thought of one. We used one last time. Do you remember what we were doing? I forgot.
It was something like we'll see you when you need a refill or something like that, or like catch you on the refill, something like that.
All right, here we'll do the sign off. We'll keep workshopping it. We're still workshopping it.
Yep. If you have suggestions, please throw them in the comments.
Yeah. So this has been episode 4 of Discussions and Dragons. I've been Steve, and I continue to be Steve. He's Eric, and continues to be Eric. You can find us. I don't know. Do
Doesn't
you?
continue to be Eric.
Last time
What
I
if I just
checked,
what if I just pulled this off and I was Maisie Williams?
I'd have a lot more questions. You can find us at this channel that you are watching it. You can find us on
currently.
you can find us on YouTube, and if you're watching on Twitch, you can find the YouTube, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can find the Twitch. All of the links are in the various descriptions down below. Something about smashing a like button and ringing a bell. In the meantime, we'll be back in 2 weeks for some sort of episode about something.
For another episode about something. We have a lot of topics, so we'll pick one.
We have a lot of topics.
Plenty of topics.
All right, here we go. Are you ready to workshop the sign off?
I'm ready to workshop this sign off. Let me get my cup.
Yeah.
I'm technically out of coffee, but we'll use it as a prop.
Same, yeah. This has been Discussions and Dragons.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Steve.
And we'll see you for a refill.